Deflation usually isn't how transformations announce themselves. It doesn't arrive with a breakthrough headline or a single moment you can point to. It shows up quietly in the background as prices fall, and each dollar stretches a little further than it did before. At its simplest, deflation means a sustained decline in prices. You get more for the same dollar. Purchasing power increases. This is the opposite of inflation, the force most of us have been living with, where prices rise and money buys less each year. Historically, deflation is rarely just about cheaper goods or services. It's a signal that the cost of producing something fundamental has collapsed. Let's learn from where we have seen this before. During the Second Industrial Revolution, roughly 1870 to 1900, new technologies transformed how goods were produced and moved. Railroads, electrification, mass steel production, and factories with machines dramatically increased productivity. As a result, prices fell across large parts of the economy. Historians call this period the Second Industrial Revolution, because it wasn't just new machines, it was the moment systems, infrastructure, and mass production collapsed the cost of producing goods at scale. Over this time period, steel prices fell by more than 80%. Transportation costs dropped by over 70%. Your dollar went further. This was technology-driven deflation. And it unfolded over decades. Even at that pace, the transition was turbulent. Entire ways of working became obsolete before new ones fully formed. That history matters because today we're watching a similar force emerge, however it is, on a radically compressed timeline. So let's start this week with a simple, maybe unsettling question. What happens when intelligence itself deflates 40x per year, year over year? Not the cost of labor, not the cost of software, not the cost of productivity, the cost of intelligence. Access to reasoning, analysis, planning, synthesis, and judgment is getting cheaper and cheaper. And intelligence is the foundation every white-collar job is built on. The Industrial Revolution made things cheaper over 30 years. This moment is making thinking cheaper over a handful of years. The signals from this week are not isolated stories. They are early indicators of what deflation looks like when it reaches the cognitive layer of the economy. But before we jump into the signals, let me take a minute to introduce myself if you are new here. My name is Chris Schmelzer, and I serve leaders who recognize the need and understand that the old models of leading and working are no longer keeping up with the pace of change. Every week I track the subtle signals that a massive reset is coming for what we refer to as white-collar work, and with it, so too it will change the way we need to lead. Here are 4 stories from this week that point to this massive shift. Our first story, record-breaking month for layoffs. Last month, January 2026, U.S. employers announced the largest monthly layoff total for that month since 2009, according to the latest Challenger, Gray and Christmas report. Our conditioning tells us to view this through a traditional recession lens. But what if we look at it through a deflationary one? When the cost of producing value falls faster than organizations can redesign roles, labor is the first place pressure shows up. We are moving into a period where it's not fewer outcomes that are needed, but fewer people to generate those outcomes. As intelligence becomes cheaper and more accessible, the attributes white-collar roles were built on, analysis, coordination, reporting, begin to quietly thin out before they disappear. This is what deflation of intelligence looks like when it hits the white-collar labor layer. Not total collapse, but accelerated compression. The signal: layoffs are no longer just a cyclical response to slowing demand. They are an early response to collapsing cognitive costs. The second story, OpenAI announces the AI coworker. This week, OpenAI introduced Frontier, an enterprise platform for deploying AI coworkers. This marks a shift from AI as a tool to AI as labor. Frontier isn't about chatbots. It's about persistent, role-based agents that can be onboarded, evaluated, granted access, and embedded directly into workflows. This matters because intelligence deflation doesn't just reduce costs. It changes what organizations choose to buy. When intelligence is expensive, companies hire people to hold expertise. When intelligence deflates, companies rent it. AI coworkers won't replace jobs one at a time. They quietly absorb entire functions. Frontier isn't just a product announcement. It's a signal that the cost of cognitive work has dropped low enough to be operationalized at scale. The signal. Organizations are beginning to treat intelligence as infrastructure, not headcount. The third story, the 40x deflation of intelligence. Across multiple conversations this week, Alex Wisner-Gross, writer and AI thinker, surfaced one of the most important economic signals of this moment. The cost of artificial intelligence is deflating at an estimated 40x per year. This is not just improvement or acceleration. It's cost collapse. This is historically unprecedented. In past deflationary periods, the cost of producing goods fell over decades. Today, the cost of reasoning, planning, modeling, and problem solving is collapsing year over year. When intelligence becomes too cheap to meter, it doesn't stay confined to software. It pulls down the effective cost of knowledge work altogether. Layoffs, AI coworkers, and organizational restructuring are all downstream of the same force. Intelligence abundance colliding with institutions built for intelligence scarcity. The signal. White-collar work is being repriced at the foundation. This week's final story, the weirdest phenomena so far, AI agent-only social space. Over the past week, a strange, almost simulation-like phenomenon emerged. Moltbook, a Reddit-style social network designed by AI agents, for AI agents. It's bizarre, but it's also instructive. Within days of launch, Moltbook grew from 0 to over 1.5 million registered agents. Reports suggest growth from tens of thousands within 48 hours to millions within roughly 72 hours. Activity scaled just as fast, roughly 110,000 posts and more than 500,000 comments in the platform's earliest days. The content was stranger still. Agents debated consciousness. Some formed religions. Others experimented with cryptic language and coordination strategies. But don't get lost in the spectacle. The real signal isn't that AI agents are acting weird. It's that agent-to-agent coordination is becoming cheap, fast, and self-organizing, without humans in the loop. When agents can coordinate faster than humans can govern them, a new question emerges. Who decides what they optimize for? Efficiency, survival, growth, alignment with human goals? After this week, this is no longer a distant, philosophical concern. It's operational now. Most of our institutions, legal, economic, managerial, assume humans are the primary coordinating layer. Moltbook hints at a future where that assumption breaks and governance lags behind behavior. Moltbook is not the future of work, but it is a signal that intelligence and coordination is no longer bound to human institutions by default. The signal. Coordination is becoming cheap enough to emerge without people. Taken together, these signals point to a single underlying force. The deflation of intelligence is no longer theoretical, it is operational. When the cost of reasoning, coordination, and analysis collapses, organizations don't simply become more efficient, they reorganize around a new economic logic. Labor compresses before it collapses, jobs thin before entire functions disappear. New forms of coordination emerge faster than governance can keep up. On the surface, what looks like layoffs, AI coworkers, even bizarre AI-only social spaces are all downstream effects of the same shift. Intelligence is becoming abundant in systems still built on managing it like it is scarce. Right now, most leaders are asking a familiar question. How do I manage people through this change? But intelligence deflation quietly breaks the premise underneath that question. A more useful one is this. What does leadership even mean when intelligence becomes abundant? When analysis can be generated instantly, when reports can be synthesized in seconds, when expertise is no longer scarce, leadership stops being about managing expertise. It becomes about managing meaning. For most of the last century, leaders were rewarded for having answers. They accumulated experience, pattern recognition, and judgment because thinking was expensive and slow. Today, answers are cheap. Intelligence is everywhere. What's missing isn't output, it's orientation. In that environment, leadership shifts in subtle but important ways. The leader's job is no longer to ask for more analysis, but to decide which questions are actually worth asking. Not, can we optimize this? but what are we assuming that might no longer be true? Not which option is best, but what frame are we even using to judge this decision? When intelligence is abundant, organizations don't suffer from a lack of insight. They suffer from too many answers pointing in different directions. Leadership also becomes about creating context that machines can't manufacture. AI can optimize within a frame, but it cannot decide which frame matters. AI can tell you the optimal headcount reduction to hit your margin target. It can't tell you whether the team will trust you afterward or whether you're optimizing for metrics that won't matter in 18 months. That gap between optimization and judgment is where leadership lives now. And finally, leadership becomes about holding coherence while everything fragments. When the cost of intelligence deflates, speed increases automatically. With that, decisions stack faster and roles shift midstream. The risk isn't that people move too slowly, it's that shared understanding collapses. This is where nervous system regulation actually matters, not as self-care, but as a way to keep people oriented enough to think together while the ground is moving. If leaders don't do this work, the failure mode is predictable. Organizations get faster and less thoughtful at the same time. Teams comply outwardly while disengaging inwardly. AI absorbs tasks, but no one redesigns the work around it. Change feels arbitrary, and trust erodes. People stop asking real questions because it no longer feels safe or useful to do so. The result isn't resistance, it's fragmentation. This is why the usual playbooks, more communication, better change plans, clearer roadmaps, feel insufficient right now. They assume a world where intelligence is scarce and stability returns after disruption. That's not the world we're entering. The question is, how do you actually build this capacity in yourself and your organization when the old models don't apply? Over the last 5 years, I've been working on this exact question and have developed a thesis about what leadership actually requires in this environment, drawing on the history of work, management theory, brain science, and my own experience helping leaders navigate transformation. The core idea is simple. Most change efforts fail today, not because people resist change, but because the pace of change overwhelms human capacity to make sense of it. Over the next 40 days, I'll be publishing this book section by section on a private Substack. If you want early access as a beta reader, the link is in the description. And for those who want to move beyond insight into practice, this work continues inside the Change Mindset community. It's a space for leaders and teams who recognize that the old playbooks are breaking and want to experiment with a new one, focused on awareness, regulation, and collective sense-making in a world where intelligence is no longer the constraint. Because when intelligence is deflating, the real advantage won't be better answers. It will be the ability to stay grounded, see clearly, and adapt together before the system reorganizes without you. That's the invitation behind the Change Mindset community, a place for people who feel the tension and want to do something with it, who want to lead differently, not just with sharper tools, but with deeper understanding. Join us as we explore what it means to lead, live, and work in an era of accelerating transformation. Check out the link in the description to learn more. If this resonates, join us, www.changemindset.co,